Folks, welcome to this Voxcast where we cover our recent exploits at the Fun and Fluff Tournament hosted by the London Wargaming Guild. Absolutely awesome. They hosted it out of the new Dark Sphere Superstore,
which is an exciting place to be holding games now.
It is. So it's a new venue in London.
New venue.
Lots of tables.
Lots of tables. You could have a 100-man tournament in there, I reckon, quite comfortably.
You know what? Yeah, maybe. Actually.
I think you could.
Yeah, you probably could. They do have, they even had spare tables. So yeah, actually.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. So for those of you which aren't aware of who the London Wargaming Guild are, they are basically a club that run out of Seven Dials in Covent Garden. You can check them out on Facebook and Instagram. Probably, if I remember, I'm going to leave a link in the video description below. Run a really, really awesome club. Peter runs it with Richard. And generally put on a lot of events actually as well. This is the first event that I've been to with them, but it was absolutely fantastic experience, and they'll have more coming up next year as well. So there were, we should say, some restrictions on the event because it was a Fun and Fluff event. It was an ITC event though, so you could get ITC points and so forth. But they put some really, really cool restrictions on the armies to ensure that we didn't get the same sort of meta armies that you would expect at a regular tournament. And it also made for some really interesting tactical play because you had to build around that, right? So I took my Grey Knights.
Yeah.
And you took your Tau.
I did. Yeah.
In summary, restrictions-wise, were single battalion.
Single battalion, single faction.
Yeah, and it was what they call a Highlander.
Yes.
Yes. So what that meant is that outside of your troops and dedicated transports, you could only have a single data slate, so unit of any other type. So, one Demon Prince or one Storm Raven or, whatever, one Riptide, So there were some other restrictions and little tweaks that they had on top of that, such as changing stratagems.
Yeah, and troops, you could only have a certain number based on their armour save.
Their armour save, exactly.
So I think I could have 40 Fire Warriors in total if I wanted.
And it was only 1,500 points as well.
Yeah.
So I generally found that the troops weren't really restricted. Even if you were a Marine player and wanted to take Marines, you could still take...
We saw lots of Marines.
Yeah, as many as you would, you could try and fit in anyway.
Yeah, which is cool.
There were things like you could take an Imperial Knights army though, however, so that was the only step away from a battalion.
Yeah.
In which case you had to be a full super heavy detachment. But again, they were restricted on one data sheet, so you couldn't... per unit, so you couldn't take like all Crusaders and stuff like that.
And you couldn't. It was there was a maximum of 500 points, I believe.
Right, so you couldn't put in the big boy. You couldn't put in Castellan or Valiant. They also limited their stratagems to being each one only one use.
Yeah.
So you could only rotate that Iron Shield once. Etc. So really, really interesting. And to be fair,
and one last thing, no Forge World.
No Forge World. That's right.
Yeah.
And you know what? Before we get stuck into the games, which obviously all you guys are probably interested to know how we did, Stig also went to the tournament, as did Sanger. Sadly, they couldn't be here today, but they will both talk about their own exploits, I'm sure, in upcoming videos and battle reports and so forth. But Sanger's first ever tournament,
he won a game.
Yeah,
I know that's kind of ruining the surprise of him telling you, but it was very exciting. We're all very excited.
It was, because he was there, just doing his thing. He's not the most experienced 40k player. So it's his first event. It was a really good experience for him.
Yeah.
Stig did really, really well.
Yeah.
He actually won 4 of his games. Yeah. So did very well in that format. But in general, I have to say, straight off the bat, the format worked really, really well. What we got were lots of really interesting armies, and there were a variety of fantastic players there as well that are built within these restrictions. And bought some really interesting lists, and it created some really, really great playing moments. I thought across the tournament. So that's the formats. We've spoken a little bit about that. I think it's probably time for us to get stuck into our games. Bone, why don't we start with you?
Okay.
So we'll cover your list, and then we'll go into his games by one. That's coming up next.
Alrighty, so let me take you through my 1,500 point list. So obviously I took Tau, and you can only take a battalion, so I had 8 command points. And we're using the Highlander format here. So I had 3 HQs. I had a Fireblade, who was my warlord. I gave him the Pure Tide engram chip with 8 command points, and especially Tau, a very command point hungry army, so I still decided that it would probably be worth it. Yeah. It actually didn't really work in my favour for the majority of the tournament. I just couldn't get any command points back, or very rarely. I think there was one game where I started getting them and I didn't need them. So that's always the way, isn't it?
I think it is interesting as well. So sorry to interrupt you, but just something I noticed at this event as well. And just in battle reports recently, since this FAQ where you can only get the 1 point back per battle round, it does make a big difference.
It's a huge difference.
I mean, obviously it does, right, guys? But I mean, when you're playing it as well, you've got what the theory in your head, but when you're playing it and noticing it, it does make the command points, farming warlord traits or whatever, not as necessary as they were before. They're still very good, but now they're not as abused as they were before, which is a great thing.
Which is good. It's odd. I think you see them still. Like, everyone seems to still be taking them because
they still are very good.
Yeah, but it's just they're just nowhere near as potent as they were. We saw a bit of that over the weekend here.
But yeah, please continue.
Thank you, I will. I then had my Enforcer Commander in there with his Cyclic Iron Blasters. He had Drone Controller, and then he had 2 Shield Drones come down with him as well. I also had an Ethereal in there.
Of course, the Toga.
Yeah, weirdly enough though, I actually, I'll go through my list, just let me finish and I'll tell you my thoughts about it based on what happened. So I then had 4 units of 6 Fire Warriors. I had 1 Riptide, I had 1 Ghost Keel, who was the MVP actually of this tournament for me. I then had a unit of Pathfinders with Pulse Accelerator and Grav Inhibitor drones. Again, they came quite handy. And then I had 6 Pathfinders in there. I then had 8 marker drones, and then I had broadsides. I took missile sides for this one, so they had 5 shield drones with them as well. The Riptide and the broadsides also all had velocity trackers, which was excellent because I faced actually nothing with fly. So that was really good. Except like 1 unit here and there.
It's always the way.
Always the way.
Not always, but it's annoying.
Often the way. So the list was good. Now I missed a trick slightly with my list. I built it not really thinking about squadrons. Astra Militarum, as you know, can take things like 3 Lehman Russ battle tanks.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Now...
that got around the Highlander.
So that got around the Highlander a bit. Now...
3 Talos.
Actually, what I've got here, with rate of fire, I could deal with 1 or 2 Lehman Russ battle tanks. Sure. And other tanks as well. Astra Militarum was always going to be a hard matchup for me, but I could deal with a couple. But with a couple of my games, and as we go through it, I came up with substantially a lot more than that, and I just didn't have the firepower. So I think if I had my time again, and I'd clicked onto that before I made this list, I actually would have taken a lot more anti-mech stuff.
So how would you have gotten that, which is very interesting, and then obviously I'll talk about my own experience with it as well.
How would I have got that?
How would you get around that in the Highlander format with your army?
Well, it's tough. I was thinking about it. Potentially you could have done something like taken Long Strike with Ion Cannon as well as another Hammerhead, because technically they're 2 different data slates.
And then you would have had the Ghost Keel effectively 2 Hammerheads there.
Technically 2 Hammerheads.
That's a fair answer for me.
Something like that probably would have been the answer.
And
then with the rail, the rail sides, because also you could only take 1 Riptide. The rail sides were there to actually figure out to counter that lack of firepower that Tau used to having. Other problems with Highlander with Tau is marker lights. It's a real issue. You kind of need, especially how I run them, I have a minimum of 20 in all of my lists now. And you need that many to make sure you're lighting up everything. And you really felt it. Tau really felt it when they didn't have them. Also, this list wasn't probably built as efficiently as it could have been towards not LVO, what's it called? ITC mission format.
Sure, yeah, because they were playing the ITC missions.
They were playing ITC
championship missions straight out of the pack.
Yeah. This was pretty static, more so than usual, because at least when I've got my Riptides, I know I'm moving out 12,
right?
And then they've got extra things where they can do boosts and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
So that was felt again
right.
in this type of list. So I was sort of on the back foot with the way that I built this list.
Yeah.
Had it my time again, there's a few tweaks that I would have made. There were some other tail players that they did really well with things like Devilfish. I'm not surprised, actually. I think that was, if looking at the mission format more closely, if I had done that before I'd submitted my list, I would have actually considered that sort of stuff as well.
Well, the old for the old 4th edition Tau player fans will remember the Fish of Fury tactics, which is basically mobile units in Devilfish, which then jumped out and rapid fired. It was really, really cool. Yeah. But for those of the viewers here that might be watching, going, Lawrence Bone, what is ITC? So it's the independent tournament circuit. It's run by Frontline Gaming, which is an American company, and the mission format that they've come up with is basically designed to be a competitive, balanced mission format for tournament play for Warhammer 40,000. And in summary, the core of all the missions is: did you kill a unit? You get a point. Did you hold an objective in your player turn? You get a point. At the end of the battle round, did you kill more than your opponent did? So did you kill 2 units, they only killed 1? You get another point.
Yeah.
Did you hold more objectives than they did? You get another point. And each mission has got its own specific bonus points.
And then you choose your secondary mission.
Choose the secondary, which makes it real spicy, a bit more interesting. So, there's things like Big Game Hunter. If you destroy a vehicle that has 10 plus wounds, you get a point. So it's basically Maelstrom, but you've only got a list. I think it's 12 different secondaries you can pick from. And you can change them every game. So the idea is you're taking away the random luck that Maelstrom can have. Yeah. And you're being specific, you're choosing your secondaries based on your opponent. But what you can immediately see, for those of you which are maybe a bit more experienced with 40k or have played lots of games, because of the whole nature of killing a unit and holding an objective, and in killing more, holding more, it's forcing the armies to be more dynamic.
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to go out and hold more objectives than your opponent, right? Because you want all of those points. So that just reinforces what Bo's saying there.
Exactly. So that was kind of a flaw in the list. If I had my time again, the thing is though, it's tough with Highlander with Tau as well, because Markolites was really something which I struggled with.
How many did you get in?
I got a total of. So I had 8 marker drones, but remember they're being shield drones as well.
Yeah, they're doubling up here. Yeah.
So I only had 6 Pathfinders. And then I had the what else did I have? And then I had the Fireblade as well. Yeah. So in total, I had 15.
Yeah.
Which is it sounds like a lot, but actually because the marker drones often, I needed them to protect my Riptide or something like that, and I only went first one time the entire weekend, which was great. And that was when I seized the initiative as well, which I made sure everyone in that hall heard. It was bellowing. It was very cool. You can't. The list was okay. There's definitely some tweaks that I could make for it. If I go back to another one, and I think I will, it was a really fun weekend. I had a great time, although I was horrifically ill, and I apologise if any of my opponents now have the cold. I call it the cold because it's been an arduous journey getting rid of it. So that's my list. So it was 1499. It may have been a good year. I wasn't alive. Lots of things going on then, I'm sure. So that was the list. And then I guess, shall we go? I'll go into my first game, I guess.
Okay, so that's coming up next.
So game 1, we arrived very early at this as it always is the way. I think we'd done a 12-hour filming day the day before, I think, as well. I
was very tired.
We were
literally had about 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I'd had about 4. We got there very early. Luckily, there was a Wetherspoons not far away from the tournament, which helped me get through the whole weekend.
For international viewers, it was a pub.
It's a pub, a cheap pub. It's an English institution.
Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, I digress. So first game I had was against a fella called Jamie. And he brought Astra Militara. So this is when I started to realise that maybe my list wasn't quite up to the level that I needed it to be for this tournament, actually. So he had a whole bunch of tanks in there. He had a whole bunch of infantry. He definitely played a lot of ITC, or more than I have, to be fair. And he wasn't a bad player at all, actually. He was a very good player.
He came 14th or something at the LGT as well.
Yeah. So he knows his stuff.
Yep.
So already I was like, okay, cool. This should be an interesting game. But then we started, and he got first term, and we also got Hammer and Anvil, so that hurt. And then he had a bit of a whiff a turn, so I was able to stay in the game. But
you didn't take any pictures of the games, did you?
I didn't take any pictures.
Right, so it won't be
Sorry,
anything
guys.
up on screen.
Well, because there was no Wi-Fi in there, I just kind of completely forgot about my phone. I had this lovely weekend where I just was off my social media. It was great. So yeah, we had a game. I think we got about 4 rounds in because we were both. It was first day. We were chatting a lot, but we were both okay with it going a bit slower. We kind of both knew that that's how it was going to go. It was a close game. I think it was 14 to me, 21 to him, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was close. It was, and yeah, I can't really say much more about that. I was outgunned. I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough firepower to deal with his tanks because he had. I think he had like Pask, another 2 Lehman Russ. He had a Wirven in there.
Yeah.
Then he had some Bullgrins in there as well. And then he had a Hellhound.
Yeah.
And it's just
I played him as well, incidentally.
Yeah.
So,
and it was just a lot of anti-tank that I didn't have.
Yeah.
Because again, not tweaking onto it. So lesson learned about that one. But so great game, nice fella. Not too much I could have done differently. I did. There was probably some target priority in one turn where I could have swapped it around. It might have been more effective.
Right.
But it was one of those games where I sunk all of my shots from my missile sides into one of his tanks. So all of them. And I was using the reroll wound stratagem, and he was left with 1 wound.
Oh, the insult.
Yeah. So it was just one of those. But yeah, it was a really good game, and so that was my first game. I enjoyed it, Jamie. Thank you for the great game. You're a cool cat.
So that was game 1.
That was game 1.
So let's go into game 2 then. See what happens.
Yeah. So, the second game that I played was against a fellow called Ollie. Absolutely lovely chap. He had his tabletop tactic dice on the table, so already I was like, I was giving him all the Fun and Fluff points immediately. Really lovely fella. Terrible matchup for him. He had Custodes on foot, essentially. He had some Terminators in there, and the other guys who were just the Axes, who don't have the shields, coming in. He had 1 shield captain on the bike, and he had Captain Valoris, or Captain General Valoris. Again, we got Hammer and Anvil, though. I screened him out, and I didn't really have to do much. It was a low-scoring game, because quite rightly, I couldn't table it, and he hid one of his units right at the back. Right. But it was also a quick game because there wasn't much. I mean, he didn't get into range until turn 3. I'd already depleted a lot of his units as well. Right. It was one of those games which I really enjoyed it because Ollie was a lovely guy and we had a good chat. But when
it wasn't a fair matchup.
No, it wasn't a fair matchup.
Right.
And this happens at tournaments all the time. Yeah. We try and avoid it happening when we play here. Yeah. 1, it's not interesting to watch, but 2, it's just not interesting to play, if I'm honest. So
it's the rock paper scissors scenario.
Yeah. So it was just one of those games. I tabled him by this 1 unit which was hidden right at the back. I tried to get close enough, but again I wasn't mobile enough. With my Riptide was putting in the smart missiles, but we got the full 6 games in quite quickly, 6 battle rounds in quite quickly, and I just couldn't shift him off that final objective. So I can't remember the score, but it was pretty substantial to me. Sure. So yeah, I get not really much to say about that game other than Ollie, thank you for taking it on the chin like an absolute champion. So at this point in the game, in the tournament, I was 1 for 1. We just come back from lunch. I was feeling good, and then we went into my 3rd game, which was very funny, and I'll tell you all about that in just a second. The 3rd game I played was against a fella called Jake. Now, he actually lived in Brisbane for a while. I think 10 years, he told me. And he was now back over here. So he worked at in retail, he said, at the shopping centre that I used to hang out at, called it was called the Indooroopilly Westfield Shopping Centre. Or as we used to call it, the cool kids called it the Droho. That's where you go after school to meet up with the girls and have a McDonald's and just hang out. It was a great place. Okay. So we bonded over that immediately. Really funny game. He brought World Eaters in there, so he had Khan in there, which was awesome. He had some obliterators in there, which were beautifully converted. In fact, the entire army was converted. He'd actually used Primaris bits to make them all really big, berserkers and stuff.
Good.
And it really kind of fit in.
They should be.
Yeah, they looked amazing. Yeah. They looked really cool. The colour scheme was great. There was lots of blood over everything. It was cool. He had a demon prince in there as well. They had rhino. They were rhinos to kind of protect them, to get the ball rolling, and all that sort of stuff. So really, again, not a great matchup though. Running at a gun line, and I got very lucky in this game.
Oh.
I got very lucky in this game, yeah.
Please explain.
So, for example, I think it was turn 2, on the left-hand flank. So I'd had a pretty good first turn. I destroyed one of his rhinos, and I pretty much killed a unit of berserkers in there, which is pretty big at 1,500 points. Yeah. So I was feeling good. I killed all but one.
Okay.
And there was also, I think, a Dark Apostle in there, or an Exalted Champion, one of the two. And so my Ghost Keel, I'd used him to come around and snipe. So he'd come heavy, this was on the left flank, with the Demon Prince. The Exalted Champion was still there, and then he also had a one Berserker left.
Right.
So I had he didn't have much shooting, so he couldn't kill my shield drones. And they operate as a separate unit now. Yep. So I still, with Tau-Sept, I still get my 5-up shooting for the charge phase. So my Overwatch is still 5-up. So he charged both of my units, first with the Demon Prince. So with the Fusion Accelerator, I rolled a 6 to get 3 shots. I then rolled 2 6s and a 5 to hit him.
This is your Ghost Kill, right?
This is my Ghost Kill. This is why he was the MVP of the entire tournament. And then with my other 2 Fusion, I rolled and I got another hit. So I hit him 4 times. I then wounded him 4 times. Oh no, I think I wounded him 3 times and used a reroll to wound 4.
That's obnoxious.
He then failed all of his saves. And I was in melter range, so then obviously I rolled 2d6, so I did 17 wounds to the Demon Prince in Overwatch. And he had something which gave him feel no pains. He made like 2 of them, so I removed him from existence.
Ouch.
Then, it's not finished, then the Berserker ran at me.
Yeah.
And again, I rolled 3 shots on the Fusion Accelerator. I hit him twice, and once with my other Fusion. I removed him from existence. And then at this stage, we were both laughing. He goes, well, I'm going to chuck in my Exalted Champion. He came in, and the same thing happened. I actually killed that whole flank with in my...
Jake, that must have been so demoralising, dude.
Well, but we were laughing about it much. It was because it was so incredible. But yeah, so when that happened, and then he still had to charge like I'd screened really well. He did play quite well. He'd came in on the side. There was a ruin here that he could charge through.
Nice. So
I'd left a little gap there. So we managed to tie up 2 units of Fire Warriors that turn. But then I still had my Riptide there and my broadsides, and it was kind of all over before it began. I think we got to like turn 3 and I tabled him. But honestly, it was a very, very fun game. Really, really fun. Oh yeah, he also had he had this really cool converted Helldrake.
Oh yeah.
And you know how normally their wings are out like this? He kind of converted it so it looked like almost like a dart flying through the air.
Oh, nice.
It looked really cool, but I killed that turn 1. That was one of the times that my velocity tracker actually paid off. One of the only
And
times.
Eldrakes don't even have a -1 to hit anyway.
They don't, because for some weird reason. So yeah, that was day 1. So I got like I think it was like 35 points for that one.
Nice.
So I was feeling pretty good at this stage. I'd got 2 wins in, 1 loss. We went and had a couple of beers afterwards, met up with some great people there. A fellow called Jonathan, we went and had some drinks with him afterwards, who he's a Blood Angels player.
Cool.
He did quite well, I think, overall. Considering he couldn't play one game, he had to leave and had come back, and I think he still placed really well.
Yeah.
We had a really good evening, and then I kind of went home and fell into a coma. I actually managed to get 8 hours sleep, which was a blessing. And then we came back for day 2.
Okay.
Which I will go on to in just a moment. So day 2, I played my first game against a fellow called Joshua, who is the hipster wargamer.
Josh, yeah.
Josh, yeah.
Awesome. Josh,
yeah. He's actually doing a couple of little paint jobs for Beard at the moment.
Yeah, so he's on Instagram.
Yeah, check him out.
At Hipster Wargamer.
Yeah.
Is his tag. His username.
Yeah. So he's a lovely fella. He brought Ravenwing.
Great painter.
Great painter as well. His whole army looked great. And they're all themed. All of his squads had names. He did speeches before he'd roll important dice. And it was a very immersive game. I really enjoyed it. So he brought his Ravenwing. That was the game I seized on, which was cool.
Oh.
But again, we kind of he played really well. He was able to kind of go down the left side of the board effectively, and there was a lot of line of sight blocking, so he could kind of jump between that to make sure he was going to get into charge range. I then, seeing this was coming, I kind of went full tilt against him, so I used the Montcar thing so I could advance and shoot as if I hadn't moved.
Yeah.
So I shifted everything to the left, and effectively my whole gun line just moved to the left, so I got range on him. And that at that point then I was just slowly kind of chipping away. He had these beautiful Terminators, the Night Terminators with the storm shields and the flails. I can't remember their name.
They are the Deathwing Knights.
Deathwing Knights.
Yeah.
Deathwing Knights, that's
Yes.
it. So he came down, he got some charges off, but I'd managed to kind of screen properly and hold off against a lot of that. My drones managed to protect my units as well. They came down, they decided to charge me, I used Greater Good. My Riptide wiped them out before they got to do anything in Overwatch. He failed all of his 3-up invulnerable saves, and because there are only 2 a pop, that was it. So again, Tau Sept doing what it does best.
Ow.
That hurt. And then after that, I slowly kind of whittled it down, and by turn 3 or 4, unfortunately, there wasn't much left. He had one lieutenant, his Primaris lieutenant, which was hiding in the top right-hand side of the board, but I'd had my Ghost Keel hunting him. So he conceded, and I got 30 points. But his list was cool. He had a Dark Talon in there, which is, we're all really big fans of around here. Samael was in there. He had the Corvus in there as well. Not the Corvus, the Dark Shroud rather.
Right.
And I think he had the Dark Talon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll tell me. Had a big blob of Black Knights in there as well. So it was a really good list. Again, not a great matchup against me, potentially. Yeah. So again, cool game. So we finished a little bit earlier. Went and hung out at the pub. I had a good old time waiting for my next game, which was a doozy. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. Oh yeah, when it's good. Oh yeah.
I say, oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So at this stage, I'm winning on 3 wins, sitting on 3 wins, 1 loss. I'm feeling pretty good.
So you've lost your first game and you've won then 3 in a row.
I am on the way to doing the submarine.
So you're, right.
I have submerged myself. I am on the way. Then I came up against a player called Ewan. Now Ewan brought again. I came up again against an Astra Militarum list, and he had 5 Lehman Russ tanks in there, including Pask and a tank commander.
Right. Jamie, I think, had 4, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 plasma eradicators and 1 Pask.
Yeah. So he had plasma eradicators in there. He also had I think he had the one with the big D6 cannon, or the cannon on it, which does D6 damage.
Demolisher.
Yeah, maybe? I think he had a demolisher in there as well. And he had a hellhound. Then he had a chimera. So there was just lots and lots of strength 7, strength 8. Again, it was Dawn of War deployment, so that was more in my favour because I could set up my gun line properly. However, he went first. I at this stage, if I'm honest, and I apologize if you're watching, mate, I'm sorry. I was really unwell during this game, and my flu was getting really intense. I made a couple of mistakes. I deployed my drones incorrectly, so he actually managed to get line of sight on them.
So he could snipe them out.
Then he went. He also went first. He killed my Riptide turn 1, and really that was
huge at 1500. Yeah.
Yeah, that was There was no real coming back from it. My counter was good. I killed Pask turn 1, and I nearly killed his command tank as well because I was going for my secondary points there. Which I did get in the end, and I managed to clear out a load of stuff. But when you lose your Riptide in turn 1 at 1500 points, it's tough.
It was a substantial amount of your firepower, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To not be able to retaliate with.
And then he was in my line, so I was trying to clear out all of, because he had units with flamers. It was a great list. He had units with flamers and stuff in there as well. Yeah. So I couldn't let them kind of survive. So it was tricky. I managed to hold out for quite a few turns,
right?
But he did table me in the end. I think we ran out of time. I can't. Oh no, he didn't. He didn't quite table me. My ethereal was hiding, so I got as many points as I can, but I was kind of soundly beaten at that point. And this is when it kind of reiterated that I hadn't really built the right list for this event, which is one of those things you live and learn, right? But yeah, being able to circumnavigate the Highlander with squadrons, I thought it made it difficult because there are other lists that could do it as well. Like for example, with knights, you could take dual. You could take Helverins more than one and stuff like that.
Right.
And so it made it.
Well, that gives those armies definitely an
advantage
in that Highlander format for sure, because they can literally circumnavigate it, and some armies might not have the best anti-tank options across different units.
Yeah.
So, and if you can only if you've only got one good unit, you as you said at the beginning could have gone like a hammerhead and long strike, and that would have been probably sufficient. But if you're an army which doesn't have access to lots of good different anti-tank units, and you perhaps only have one, and then you're only allowed to take that one, it would mean that you'd struggle against those sorts of things. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so it was one of those things. That was my 5th game. That was my 5th game.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was then, I was still, 3 wins, 2 losses, going into my last game, and I thought, you know what, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling confident. And then I came up against Duncan, who we will talk about in just a second. So then my last game was against a fellow called Duncan. So first tournament he's ever gone to. And I think he placed 10th in the end. So props to you, man. Really well done.
Well done, yeah.
I felt he underplayed himself a little bit because he kind of said to me, look, I'm kind of new to the game if I make any mistakes. So then I just went, oh yeah, I was helping him deploy. I say, well, we'll put a few extra bits in here, make it easier for you, all this sort of stuff. Only to find out that the one he does play a lot against, though, is against Tau.
Oh, so he knew the Tau well.
He knew the Tau really well.
Nice.
So he knew how to say that. So then I deployed in a way thinking I thought how he would play, given how his army runs.
Right.
And he played against it, and it was really good play, actually. So he managed didn't charge me at all. So he took out a lot of my shooting.
What did he have?
So he had, it was a similar list to last time. He had Dark Talons, he had Samael in the Sable Claw. He didn't have him on the Corvette. So you had the Dark Shroud. He had bikes with flamers, which was quite nice. He had Black Knights in there as well. A whole bunch of scouts.
Okay.
So yeah, it was on paper. Actually, I looked at it and I thought, cool. I'm pretty confident with this. It had Dark Talon as well. I'm not sure if I mentioned that.
Yeah.
But no, he played really well. He didn't charge me. He managed to. Oh, he went first as well, and actually managed to kill one of my broadsides, which was huge. I then had. So he had a pretty strong first turn, and with my counter, I thought, if I can knock out these units, I'll be okay. And I kind of whiffed a little bit.
Right.
I managed to kill his Dark Shroud, which made a huge difference. But then that was all I really killed that turn.
Right.
And then
you invested a lot for not too much more.
Yeah, not too much gain. Yeah. I really missed the extra broadside that I lost, and that's kind of what happens in Highlander games, and I find anyway. Like when you lose a unit because you can't double up, you can't look. You
feel it more.
A functioning part of your army just disappears, and you go, "Oh, I have nothing to fill that gap with now." Yeah. Marvelous. But yeah, we played really well. He was. It was one of those things. You know, he was quite new to the game, he was saying, or he played it a lot and he was kind of coming back into tournament play. Sure. So it'd been a while. I think he was saying he played a lot in the third ed. Right. He'd wrote a really cool story about his army, though. I mean, it was awesome. Really lovely painted. It was cool. We ran out of time. Right. Just because, he was getting in, he admittedly even said himself, like, I'm not used to playing at this level of play, which is fair enough. You know what I mean? So the thing is, I think if we played on though, well, I know if we played on, I actually would have tabled him.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So if it was a shame we ran out of time, but also completely fair enough. And that's just what happens at tournaments. It wasn't like he was maliciously trying to slow play or anything like that. Nothing like that. We just ran out of time. Which again, I was also feeling a bit fluid, and then you kind of get to that moment, and you definitely have that moment where you're like, okay, well, but then, you kind of get over all that sort of stuff. You should if you go to these tournaments, because if you hold on to that sort of thing, well, yeah, give you an aneurysm is what it'll do. We had a great game, lovely fella. So I finished on 3 for 3 total.
Yeah.
Which
is, look, a good result.
It's all right. It's all right. I was...
Because it was 6 games.
It was 6 games. So, I mean, I think it was one of those things that really came down to the list that I made. Because, again, I missed the trick. If I'd thought more about mech and squadrons, then I think actually I should have placed a lot higher than I did.
So where did you sort of place?
24th.
And that was out of, they were quite a lot.
64.
Yeah, 64 players.
So top mid.
Players, yeah.
Yeah, so middle of the top, as it were, which is cool. Again, I'm happy with that. But I definitely learnt a lot from that style of tournament. If anything, I'm really glad I went. For lots of reasons, it was awesome, but I learnt a lot about the ITC format. Yeah. 6 games on the trot in any sort of tournament is great.
Trial by fire.
And one of the reasons that we went was to actually play more ITC missions, because we don't tend to play them much here.
And we are going to the Las Vegas Open.
Exactly.
And when the year that I did well at the Las Vegas Open, I came 9th, just like 2 points shy of getting into that top 8 for the Sunday gaming. I had been playing Drakari all year, and I played a lot of ITC tournaments that year. Played a lot of ITC games, so I was really savvy with the format. And then the other 2 times that I went, I didn't really practice enough, to be honest. So it's always been a 3-2 or a 4-1 sort of record. But it's like anything. If you practice something, you stay practicing at it, you will get good at it, but you do need to practice. You can't just play normal 40k, because it is quite different. It's not really 40k.
It's not. It's different.
It's a different game. It is 40k, like you're building the list, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say it's not 40k, but you're not playing the 40k missions. ITC is very much its own mission formats.
Yeah.
And you do play it very differently, actually, in my experience, to how you would play a normal game.
Yeah, 100%, and that's led
which is fine. Actually, I love the ITC missions. I think they're really cool, and I do think actually they're pretty well balanced. You know, it's going to be hard push to get more, you know, much more balance out of the mission format. You know, I think it does work really, really well. So not bad.
Yeah, that's it. And then I won the losers raffle twice.
Awesome. Yeah, you did. Both of your ticket numbers, because they gave a raffle ticket for every game that you lose.
Yeah.
Really
so I was the real winner. No, but this was quite weird. So I can't remember. I think the first number I had was 63. Right. So I yelled out, "Pull out 63," and they did. And so I went and I picked an Elder Start Collecting box out there, because I thought maybe I'm going to go to the dark side.
I don't know why.
There was nothing else. Well, there was nothing to it was Demons, I think, was my other choice, or a mug or something. I thought, well, this is pretty cool, so I chose that. And then I went back, and then they went to pull out another one, and my second number was 167, I think. And I yelled out, "Pull out 167," and they did. They did one after another. There was hundreds of tickets in there, and we pulled out both of mine at the same time. It wasn't rigged. It was one of those things that happened. So I gave my second prize away because I'm so nice. Yeah. But then I swapped my Elder box for an Orc Start Collecting box.
Yeah. That seems more appropriate.
Because that was
never indicated any interest in playing Eldar. Didn't make sense.
It wasn't available in the raffle.
Right.
Someone else had won it for. I think his name was Alex. He won it for something. He either came third, or he got like best painted army or something. He'd won it anyway, and he was a
prize support was awesome.
Prize support was really good.
Lots of prizes.
Really, really good. So I swapped it. So I've now got an Orc Start Collecting box.
Amazing.
Which I'm pretty happy about. So all in all, great weekend.
Yep.
Great weekend. I think everyone knows my thoughts on squadrons anyway. I think rule of 3 shouldn't be a thing. But this was the first time that I've been on the opposite end of it in a really negative way. Because I feel that some armies there just couldn't compete against it.
No.
I could have built my army better, so that's not me saying that. But I think should be something that we look at. Not we. If London Wargaming Guild want to look at, if you go forward with it again, is that if you're going to do a Highlander, make it a Highlander. If you can, because
so you limit the squadrons.
Yeah, 100%.
Fair enough.
100%.
Yeah, I get that.
But other than that, really liked the mission format. The prizes were great. You guys were in a really tight ship. You did a fantastic job. Everyone there was, cool, and it was a really good tournament for if you're thinking about starting out. These are the sorts of tournaments which I would suggest you go to.
100%.
There are competitive players that go there because they enjoy building different types of lists, and there was a few of us there. I'm kind of almost in that competitive realm now. I'll become a bit more of a competitive player. I feel I'm getting a bit better the more and more I play. So I'm not quite at the top levels, but I want to play more stronger games now. So you are going to come against people like that. But then there was a whole bunch of people there who were just there. They were starting out. They wanted to play an army that they really liked. They'd all written stories for them, and
it was
and that atmosphere is great.
Favourite sort of tournament, to be honest.
Love it. That atmosphere is
really
absolutely
cool,
great. So I mean, if you want to get started, these are the sorts of ones you should keep an eye out for. And I believe they've already got a new one planned.
Yep. And they've got
April or something.
March, I think. And then they've got a full-on competitive format as well. And the main thing with the Fun and Fluff is that there was soft scoring involved, which is not going to be involved, at least to my understanding, in the full competitive format. Yeah. So by soft scoring, you score the person on the fluff of the army, so the painting and the fun of the game as well. So and the actual list, So very, very cool.
Yeah.
So, all right, I guess it's time for the hammer to fall. It's Grey Knights. It's my stories. They're coming up next. So here we go. It was the Hammers of Titan, or in this case, the Falchions of Titan.
Very good. Very good.
Because everything had falchions where they could. The 1,500 points to this Fun and Fluff tournament, and I really loved all my games and playing with the Grey Knights. They're a real challenge to play because they are overcosted and they're not the best army in the game right now. But because of that, you can't afford to make any mistakes with them. And even if you don't, you could still lose anyway. So you need to play the best you can to win, even a normal game. But with this format as well, even more of a challenge because it was Highlander. Now, in a weird way, that helped me because it limited what opponents could bring against me, because they could spam where people can normally spam their points efficient units, and I don't really have any points efficient units, so I don't get that same advantage. Where it limits them, it's less of a limit on me. Having said that, the few okay units I do have, I couldn't take more than one off, so it did hurt me at the same time. So it's a weird overall it was definitely better, and I think the overall results of the tournament had a far more interesting field and variety of codexes than you normally would have in pretty much whatever you can take meta.
100%.
Which is why I absolutely love these sorts of things.
I think everyone was represented except maybe Genestealer Cult.
Yes, there were no Genestealer Cult there.
But there was Necrons, there was heaps of chaos.
Yeah, doing well.
And all single factions.
It was awesome. Well. Like, it was just awesome, guys. Like, I can't reiterate, it says a lot. It says a lot about the meta. I know it's not the meta because it's completely changes the meta with being single faction and being Highlander, but the variety and how interesting it all was gold. But let's get into the list. So what did I take? So 1,500 on the nose. I rocked the man himself, who did do well, although I had my usual shenanigans in the tournament where I love perilsing with my characters, like my main characters. Not once, not twice, but usually 3 times. I like to just,
Why don't you do that when we play?
Don't know.
Well, can you start doing it, please?
No. Anyway, I took Grandmaster Voldus, the Hammer of Titan. Really, really cool. Was generally an all-round boss for me. And yes, I basically sort of rate him better than Drago now for his points. Drago's awesome, but Drago is 240 points. It's just absolutely baffling. And Voldus is 190 points, which is still really expensive, but and he hits pretty much as hard as Drago anyway, and he has more powers. So it doesn't have a storm shield, but there it is. So I had him. I had my trusty Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knights, pretty much doing the business most of the event. Gatling Silencer, Heavy Side Cannon, Nemesis Great Sword. And generally was an MVP. Would generally kill what I needed to kill most of the event. Would last a long time with his invulnerable save. So he did quite well. So that was my battalion HQ. We then had 3 units of Strike Marines, just 5 man, all with dual falchions and Stormbolters. Again, pretty reliable unit in terms of what I want them to do. They'll generally deliver on. Expensive, but that's Grey Knights. Then I had in fast attack a unit of 6 Interceptors. These guys are an all-star unit. Being able to only take 1, was tough because it meant I could only have 1 unit redeploying. But nonetheless, again, they performed well. I was happy with the choice. I then had my trusty, which everyone gets terrified about, Venerable Dreadnought. Now, the more competitive choice, guys, would have been to go to Twin Autocannon and the Twin Las Cannon. However, that wasn't 1,500 on the nose. And 2, I actually wanted a bit of duality. I wanted the ability to potentially, if I wanted to, put him up in the teleportarium to deep strike him down. So I actually gave him a close combat weapon.
Nice.
With the Twin Las Cannon. And overall, I'm not going to say I regretted that choice, because there were times where he came up with his combat weapon and did the business, which was really useful. But overall, the Twin Autocannon would have been better, because I used the classic tactic with him, which everyone gets really frightened of. It's very silly. He's just a venerable dreadnought, but he hides behind a line of sight blocking bit of terrain, and he shoots with astral aim. So he can shoot you, you can't shoot him. It's fantastic. But, obviously fast armies can get round and snipe him out, but he does well, and he was sitting on an objective, and he did perform amicably most of the event. Then I had my final piece, and what an awesome model it is. I got a Storm Raven, and I gave it all the trimmings: twin las, twin multi-melter, hurricane bolters, Storm Strike missiles, the whole thing. Why did I give it the whole thing? Well, one, again, you're limited to one sheet per unit outside of troops. I needed my anti-tank in a big way. I couldn't have more than one venerable dreadnought, so I needed something big and punchy. For Grey Knights, you're basically left with something like a Stormhawk Interceptor, a Storm Talon, maybe a Land Raider or a Storm Raven at that point. You don't have anything else for anti-tank, so I went the Storm Raven. And this thing, it did the business. Having one was really cool in 1500, because actually it was relatively survivable, and with good deployment I could put it in a corner out of range of some heavy guns. So you wait for your opponent to deploy their telltale units first, and then you deploy your Storm Raven out of range of them, or if you can't do that, depending on the setup, you have to take it on the chin, right? And you just have to rely on that -1, or hope you go first and take out those alpha targets first. So that was it. It was 1500 on the nose. Obviously, if you're looking for like a meta Grey Knight list, it's not going to be it, guys, because this is the Highlander tournament. But in terms of balance and in terms of ticking the boxes of what a decent army needs, I felt I had it. I had good combat. I had good anti-infantry, I had good anti-tank across the Storm Raven, the Dread Knights, and the Dreadnoughts. I kind of had a bit of an answer for everything, which is how I try and build any of my tournament lists. And it was really fluffy, the whole thing. It was just, the only thing that wasn't fluffy, which did upset me slightly, is that there shouldn't really be 2 Grandmasters on the field. It's not that it wouldn't happen, but the fluff that I had in my head was that the Grandmaster in Nemesis Dread Knight was actually a captain in Nemesis Dread Knight, which is suited up. And actually I've got, like, the fluff for my Falchions of Titan is I've got 3 Dread Knights, which could be used as a normal Dread Knight if you wanted to. But actually the fluff is, one is the Grandmaster, and I've got him on foot as well. Yeah. So he suits up in times of need, Iron Man style, of course. Pacific Rim style, and then I've got a captain and I've got a librarian. And they all don the dread. So they're not all really Grandmasters. No. You see what I mean? So, but where I'm going.
But they are.
Yep. Problem is that it's because the Grey Knights, like, I would have just happily done, normal Dread Knight, but the problem is the Grey Knights are so poor right now in terms of their points and the cost of their stratagems and everything, that you just need to take any little thing you can get, and it's not even broken, it's not even being cheesy at this point. You're just you're fighting for the ability to even compete. So, if they reduce the points of a normal Dread Knight, then we'll probably switch to normal Dread Knights. But right now, it's going to be a Grandmaster, or it's not going to be anything. Yeah. So, that was my list. I had 6 epic games. Let's start covering them. That's coming up next. So folks, let's get into game 1. You will have pictures of the battlefield appear as I talk you through this tournament.
The magic of cinema.
Magic of cinema. I did have the foresight to take as many pictures as I could. Sometimes you ran out of time, so I couldn't get pictures throughout all the turns, but you'll get an array of pictures coming up to try and give you an idea of what happened in the games as I'm talking. So my first opponent was George. What a little legend. Absolute boss. Really cool army. He took Admech, and he took Lucius as the Forge World, there we go. I got there eventually, which is cool because you don't see them.
I don't even know what that
super
does.
often, right? Well, exactly. So actually, they ignore the -1 modifier on the ranged attacks against them.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So it means that it makes them a little bit more resilient. They also have a strat where they can deep strike a unit.
Okay.
Which he had a unit of 17 Electro Priests. So, hello.
Oh, very nice.
So, George's list was pretty tasty. He could do the business if he wanted to. And he had a couple of Dragoons in there, which are obviously very good at combat. He had the robots, my 1950s space robots from outer space. Absolutely loved them. A load of Rangers. Dune Crawler with the big horrible gun. So he had, again, bit of everything, bit of balance in there. Was able to do the business. His bots as well were the proper 1950s space robots where they punch you in the face, which I just love.
Yeah.
It's so cool. So how did it go? Well, in all honesty, it didn't go too well for George. Okay, and that was for a number of reasons. The poor fellow was really unlucky. Okay, for a start, he was just unlucky. It wasn't any big mistake made or anything. Like he did deep strike his Electro Priests. He did try and get the charges off where he could with his Daka bots. His punchy bots. The sad truth was that he failed every single charge except one.
Oh, no.
Just like on turn 3. And again, that was against like a Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knight. I got first turn. I destroyed his Dune Crawler first turn, which meant in turn that he didn't have an effective amount of firepower to bring down my Storm Raven at that point. So, and because his Dragoons were not the Iron Striders, but the Dragoons. On his Dragoons, I did smite, deep striking with Interceptors and Voldus and so forth. And then I ended up, of course, pulling off pretty much every charge that I wanted to make throughout the game. So, I know, granted, obviously I've got a re-roll with the Dread Knight, so I mean, that's not out of, because he took first to the fray, it's a Warlord trait, so he can re-roll failed charges, and he gives re-roll failed charges to every unit within 6. So, I mean, look, it's still not actually a great chance, because when you're 9 inches away, right, the chances are you're going to fail. But with the re-roll of a failed charge, or sometimes you do spend a command re-roll on 1 die if you'd roll a 6 on 1, you can make it a little bit more reliable, but you can't rely on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But in this instance, it was Lawrence luck. It was brutal, and by turn 4, there was very little left on the board for George.
Don't worry about it, George.
No, yeah,
it happens to me all the time.
So, well, it was just me being obnoxious with my rolling, and he was just really unlucky. And what a great guy, and we actually had a real laugh playing. There was a lot of banter.
Good.
A lot of banter.
As there should be.
As there should be. Yeah. I was willing him to kill everything and anything that he could. And he did proceed to kill quite a few of my Strike Marines and the Interceptors, and it was cool. We had a good laugh. So that was it. So game 1, I pretty much got the max points that you could. Not quite the max, but near enough. And it went well. So it's like, okay, well, that's a nice start, because it could have gone horribly wrong. He could have got first turn. Dune Crawler could have sniped the Storm Raven. He could have made the charge with his priests. And then powered the unit up, and then they'll all have a 3-up invuln, and for 5-up feel no pain. Could have been really horrendous, but reality was he failed all of his charges. I storm bolted the absolute life out of those priests. Didn't even need to charge them. I killed them with shooting alone. So yeah, that was that. So that was game 1. Let's move on to game 2. It's a good start. That's coming up next. So next game was sure to be tough. It was an awesome game. We had a great time. His name was Matt, and he was rocking Harlequins. Now, I've got a lot of love for Harlequins. I really rate them. I think they're a high skill army. And what I mean by that is you need to be a good player to use them well. Matt was a good player, and he did know what he was doing with them. But on paper, he had pretty much the right tools to deal with me, and I knew it could be a struggle. Now, I know you may think that's funny, Lawrence, like, what are you talking about? You've got like a Storm Raven and stuff. Well, he's got Soaring Spite, he's super fast, he's like a -1 to hit off the board, he's got things like the lightning fast reaction to make him a -2, so even a Storm Raven taking out a Star Weaver is not that reliable. But here's the kicker, he's got a big unit of 6 Haywire bikes, and those Haywire bikes will ruin the Storm Raven or the Dread Knight, because guess what, Bo?
What?
Dread Knight's got the vehicle keyword.
Yeah.
Can you say mortal wounds?
I can. Mortal wounds.
So this was a real problem, right? I was like, oh wow, this is going to be cool, and it was cool. It was really cool. So he went first. He won the roll off to go first. And what do?
You seized, don't you?
Yeah, I seized. Yeah.
I can't. What do you mean?
That was it. I just went. Cool.
Right.
Yeah. 6. Oh, there it is. 6.
Yeah. Good.
So okay, that was good. It was a good start. Now he had his. He kept. This is the smart play, and I think he did the right thing here. Obviously, if he knew he could go first, keeping the bikes on the board was going to be a good thing. But in reality, you can never guarantee you're going to go first, guys. You can never guarantee it. So you often, especially if you've only got one unit that can effectively perhaps deal with something else, you need to protect that unit at all costs. So he did the right thing, in my opinion. He deep struck put the bikes in the webway, which meant that I couldn't alpha him turn 1. Which, is a problem. Now, as it turned out, he had his solitaire sort of centre mid board. He had a Shadow Seer and a unit of Harlequins and a Starweaver on an objective over on my far right flank in the corner. And I did what you should do against Harlequins. The way that he had deployed his forces, I was able to flank him quite effectively. So what I did is I went in hard on one flank, and that would ensure that he couldn't countercharge me, right? Because his other units were going to be too far away to get to the other side quickly enough. So I sort of played the defensive game a bit there, and also I knew that would be taking an objective in his zone as well and cause a problem.
Yeah.
So with my Dreadnought, I grounded the Starweaver over on the left flank so that he had no real way of effectively getting to me very quickly there. And then I went in hard on the right flank with the Storm Raven and Interceptors, and I blew the Starweaver up out there on the right flank, and then I shot up all the Harlequins, and then I even made a charge into them as well and finished them off. So that went quite well. So at that point in the first turn, I'd gotten the maximum points I could get, and I was in a defensible enough position to withstand his next first turn. So that's what I set myself up to do, right? So maximise my points and prevent him from doing too much back. So, and that's pretty much what happened. He did come back. He did start to kill some Interceptors. The Solitaire got in because he was like centre mid-table and they're so fast. And he did his blitz move, as was the correct play. Well done. And, came in and started ruining my day. Very unpleasant. Got some fusion pistol shots off on the Storm Raven, but he only had 2 that he could get into range at that point, so he obviously didn't destroy it. He did plink off a couple of wounds, but he only hit with 1, so it wasn't ideal for him. Kind of worked how I hoped, which I had my maximum guard up, if you like, was able to take a few of those punches and then return with some haymakers in the next turn. And that's what I did. I then popped off another couple of Starweavers. He's got like 5 at the beginning of the game. So I've destroyed 3 now, and 3 units of Harlequins, and I've because his troop master, who's the warlord, was all the way over on the left flank. By this point now, I've been able to expose him and his troops out of that Starweaver, and I've actually managed to kill them as well. However, still not out the game, because then it comes into his next turn, and of course the Skyweavers come down. They see the Dread Knight, who's just offended their lord and master, and they obliterate him. I mean, it is the haywire fireworks show. The Dread Knight is like, and he is gone. Right. That's it. He was probably the Dread Knight stopped moving, and you've got the baby carrier stopped moving. He's like trying to get out. And that's it.
And then fire.
The tragedy, exactly. And he's burnt alive.
Oh, he's cooked in there.
Oh, it's horrific.
Terrible.
Anyway, it was actually really cool. Well done, Matt. Fair play. I knew that he had one choice, 2 choices. He's going to go for the Storm Raven, or he's going to go for the Dread Knight, right? That's what he's going to do. He needs to alpha one of them quickly. As it turned out, my Dread Knight, 1, he knows that the Storm Raven can't take an objective because it's a flyer, and 2, Dread Knight is my warlord, and he took the I think it's Kingslayer. There we go.
Yeah.
So it's worth more points for him on the second turn. So yet again, he's played well. He's going for the points because in ITC, even if you might lose the game, you still want to get as many points as you can because you take all of these points with you, which is one of the things that I love about the ITC format. You've always got something to play for, even if you can't win the game.
Yeah,
which is great.
I like that.
It's great. It's fantastic. So look, he's done well there. He's still got a couple of Harlequin troops near the centre of the board, but again, he realised at this point they're kind of out of position. I'm in the polar opposite corners. He's in the middle. He can't get to me now because of the way that I've moved. So again, it's just maximising my defence. So he's had an okay turn. He's got the Dread Knight. He's got quite a few points for the game so far, but he's not able to do too much else. It's at this point that I'm then, of course, able to bring my Storm Raven out.
Very good.
Retaliate, bring Strike Marines down and around the... because I held some units back to of course, not to retaliate against these Skyweavers, and then I just absolutely Stormbolter the living daylights out of them, soften them up with some smites first. Remember, it's only damage 1 smite, but every mortal wound counts.
Sure does.
And, once I'd killed them, his army was crippled at that point. And, we played out the rest of the game, and in the end, I believe it was just shy of a tabling. I think he had like a Death Jester. Oh no, actually, I think it was a full table in the end. Yeah, he had a single Death Jester, a hero,
right?
Which survived like 2 turns with me chasing. But I did get him in the end. So he still walked away with quite a few points. He played well. But I managed to beat one of the lists which I thought I would struggle against on paper. I think it really did help that I obviously went first. But I mean, even if I hadn't, because he'd already chosen, and I think rightfully so, to deep strike those haywire bikes, they weren't shooting me in his first turn anyway, guys. So actually, might have played out the same. I don't know. But look, that was round 2. So I'm on 2 wins so far. I'm like, okay, this is great. This is a bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely now at this point, I'm on 2 big wins at this point. I'm gonna face something nasty now, real nasty, and I did. But an absolute gentleman to play, a really awesome guy. It's Andrew Bourbon I faced next with a beautiful army. It was actually really fluffy and really themed as well, but it was full Imperial Knights. And let's face it, that has got to be one of the worst matchups for Grey Knights. So that's coming up next. So here we go. So here it is. It's Hawkshroud. And they're painted as Hawkshroud, and they were painted beautifully.
That was lovely.
Yeah, and it was a nasty list.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nasty. Not deliberately so, but it's knights against grey knights. So the power level difference, the disparity is we're at the polar opposite ends of the spectrum here. Grey Knights, arguably one of the worst books. Knights, one of the strongest books. And when you go into a single faction meta, in some respects it hurts the Knights a bit because then they're not getting their usual, well, here's my Astra Militarum battalion to give me more points. But at the same time, it actually benefits them more because the Knights in that format, in a Highlander format where people's anti-tank is limited, usually, not always, but limited to that 1 data sheet of the efficient choice of whatever you want, makes Knights actually a little bit stronger. But the way that they restricted them using 1 strat, you can only use a strat once per game, so they can only rotate the Iron Shields once, not being able to take the Castellan and Valiant and that sort of jazz, actually worked really well. It did work really well. They still performed really well, so you'd expect Knights to do anyway. But yeah, this list against me was going to be real tough, and it was. So what we had was Hawkshroud. We had 2 Helverins, because again, it ignores the Highlander. He had 2 Warglaves. He had a Crusader, he had a Gallant, absolutely awesome, and what was in fact, I think that was it, wasn't it? Yeah, character.
He had 4 baby knights and 2 big knights,
yeah,
didn't he?
That's it,
yeah.
4 babies, 2 big, that's right. So the Gallant is just incredible value. Yeah, of course, because it's 1,500 points, right?
Yeah.
So Gallant is incredible value, an absolute beast. He didn't give it any relics. I know he did. He gave it the 2+ armor save, which I thought was very clever. It was quite good. And then, of course, he gave the Knight Crusader the Avenger Endless Fury. So 14 shots, exploding hits on 6s, really, really good. Nasty, lots of firepower, very resilient. A lot of my storm bolters obviously quite useless. But what I did against Andrew is what I would always try and do in a tournament scenario, which is, one, you've got to shoot what you can kill. Two, you've got to play the mission. You know, I can't beat his army. I can't. You know, unless I get lucky. Obviously, you can always get lucky, but on paper I can't beat his army because a lot of my army is not effective against his army, or at least apparently not effective on paper. So, as it turned out, again through deployment, I was able to ensure that things like his Crusader weren't really in range turn one, okay, and or out of line of sight. So, tried to deploy well, tried to hide, and you know. To try and survive as long as I could to get as many points as I can over as many turns. Now, in his first turn, obviously, Gallant starts storming towards me. He did go first. Crusader's kind of out of range. Helverins open up. He does get some damage on the Storm Raven. But he doesn't end up quite destroying it, and I think in the end, he got a bit unlucky. To be fair, he did like 6 wounds.
Yeah, it's just the -1.
It's the -1.
It's the -1. If they were -2, then they would do the business.
Yeah,
but that's my only issue with
the Helverins. Yeah, that's right. Because he did get a few hits in, and he did rightfully deploy the Sky Reaper protocols strats.
Yeah.
Where he re-rolled the hits on one of them. But between the saves and the wounds, because again, you know, he's wounding on 4s at that point as well. You know, he did 6 damage. So I mean, to be fair, it wasn't actually unlucky. It was probably about average, really, because remember, the Crusader wasn't able to lend his fire support, right? It wasn't. I put the Storm Raven right in the far corner after he had placed his Crusader, so I was deliberately placing my alpha assets last because I want to see where you're placing your stuff, right? You know, I'm just going to mindlessly place my stuff at the front of my deployment zone. Shoot me, you know. It's not going to go down there.
It doesn't work.
so you know, I waited for him to do his telltale moments, and then I did my my alpha units afterwards. So anyway, as it turns out, he hasn't, you know, his first turn, but he's put the pressure on. I've got a Gallant in my face, supported by 2 Warglaves. That's not good. So right now, I'm in a position where you can get overwhelmed by knights or armies with lots of alpha targets quite easily, and you have to remain composed against them. You have to take it a piece at a time. What can I achieve this turn realistically? How am I going to take down this, you know, this beast? Well, I'm going to start with the ankles. You know, I'm grapple him first and work the way up.
Hamstring.
Yeah, hamstring him, exactly. So what I did is the Storm Bolters are no good against a big knight because they're wounding on 6s. But against the Helverin or a Warglaive, they're wounding on 5s. So that immediately informed me, well, I need to put my assets against his units, which I'm going to be more effective against, right? So what I did is Interceptors and all my Storm Bolter fire started to go for the Helverin. Successfully destroyed a Helverin between a combination of smites and shooting. All right, that was Storm Bolter shooting. Against the Gallant, which is right up in my face, Dread Knight comes out. I kept a single unit of Strike Marines, which I deployed on the board back. Because it was ITC, so in the ground floor you couldn't see them anyway, right? So why not have them on the board? And you would come to me, was where one of my objectives was. And, you know, I kept those couple of units back, and the plan was to absolutely gang up on the Gallant. And what I did is I did a whole bunch of smites at the Gallant. I had Voldus doing Purge Soul or Vortex of the Doom, one of the two. Got a few mortal wounds off that way. And then I did use the Dread Knight to heavily damage the other Helverin, and I think I nearly killed both Helverins in the first turn.
That's nice.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, cool. And then what I did is I powered up my Dread Knights to give him the best invuln I could. Ooh. And I didn't bother wasting really my firepower on the Gallant. What's the point? Especially if it just like pings off him. I needed to kill as much of his stuff as I could so that he couldn't hurt me back as much. And I just charged the Gallant, knowing that I'd have to try and tank the saves on my Dread Knight, right? Stormraven, however, did soften up the Gallant with some Storm Strike missiles, the twin multi-melters, and the twin las cannons. Now,
was he able to use his rotate iron shields at this point?
Yep, and which he did. You know,
did he have Iron Bulwark? I forgot.
not on him. He had Iron Bulwark on his Warlord.
Right.
The Gallant had the Gallant had a great Warlord trait, and again, this was really good play. He had Landstrider, which is why he was so near me. He wasn't quite. I deployed in a way to ensure that he couldn't get a first turn charge.
Yeah.
And I took into account Landstrider, but you could catch a lot of people off guard with it because it gives you a +2 to your advance and it gives you a +2 to your charge.
Right.
And with full tilt, you can advance and charge.
It's nice.
Fella's fast, right? Really fast. And Gallants are no joke when they get into combat. So anyway, did what I could to soften it up, charged the Dread Knight in, smash, 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 don't finish it. I knew I'd be lucky if I did, to be honest, but I really damaged him now. And he was going to go down next turn. We sort of both knew it. So what happens is, destroyed one Helverin, nearly destroyed another, and really badly damaged the Gallant. I was happy with that, and I got as many points as I could.
Cool.
Then in his next turn, his Helverin retaliates, but he's degraded, so he's not that effective, so he can't deal with the Stormraven. However, the Gallant, the Crusader gets into range, ruins a whole bunch of Strike Marines, does take pot shot. He leaves combat very smartly with the Dread Knight, so that his Gallants could go and, because he could fall back and charge anyway, go and kill another unit of Strike Marines which were hiding on the objective. So he's playing really well here. And then he opened up the Dread Knight to be shot at with like the thermal cannon on his Crusader. As it turned out, I managed to tank my saves. So I was okay. But he had maximised the kills that he could. And then he charged back in. With the the Gallant cleared off the Strike Marines. Yeah. So what we ended up happening was, he's killed a good 15 Marines here at this point. He's not really. He did again try and take out a Stormraven, but this is where I think he just got unlucky, guys. He didn't. He missed with its thermal spears, whiffed real bad. Like he's rolling one shot on them, and then he's rolling like a 2 to hit. Like it would have been a miss even without the minus. It would have been a bit stupid, really. So I got lucky there. He got unlucky, to be honest. Yeah. And then in my next turn, what happens? I destroy the Gallant with the Dread Knight. I destroy the other Helverin quite easily because it was really badly damaged. I only had like 2 or 3 wounds left. The Stormraven comes out, takes out. I don't even bother. This is the thing. I don't even bother firing at his Crusader. Don't bother with it. I'm taking everything else out. All right. I destroy one of the other Warglaves, and then I attack the other one between shooting, damage it, and over the next couple of turns, cut a long story short, I've got 2 units of Strike Marines left. He does end up destroying the Stormraven with his Crusader with the thermal cannon, Endless Fury. But at this point, I've maximised my points that I can get pretty much on secondaries, and I'm sitting on an objectives. 3 inches just behind this building, line of sight blocking terrain. I've got a unit inside there. He doesn't have any command points left. I know that his Crusader cannot attack that unit. Can't enter the ruin, guys. Can't do it. There is a stratagem where he could engage with the Reaper Chainsaws, but he's got no command points left. Yeah. So at this point, I can sit on this objective and claim point every turn. Right, so it ended up being a very close game that effectively, because I'd killed everything else in his army, I'd won on points, trying to get the points up, So I won 23 points, he was on 17. That's how close it was. All right, so I just played the mission and took away his ability to be able to table me. Yeah. That's what I did. And it paid off, it paid off in the end. So really, really close game, well fought game. But that was it. So I beat really the boogeyman list, if you like, the list which I didn't think, I couldn't beat the list. The Crusader was basically unaffected. I couldn't beat the list, but I beat him on the mission. It's basically how it worked. So that was it. That was day 1. I was sitting on 3 wins, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah. Solid. So we went into day 2, game 4, that's coming up next. So game 4, I play Boris the Boss. So I'm recording.
Same initials as me there.
Yes, that's correct, actually. Yep, the BB.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, Boris.
So Boris is a really cool guy. We had a lot of banter. He's standing there in his Marks for Death shirts, tabletop tactics, got my dice, using them against me, got my objective coins, using them against me. The whole thing was like, it was like playing me, because he even looks a bit like me. It was really weird.
Yeah, there are similarities.
We had a good laugh.
Yeah.
So, and this is why, this is like the icing on the cake. He's playing Drakari.
Yeah.
And his army's called the Void Scarabs, as opposed to the Void Spiders. It was surreal. I then promptly told him there can only be one true Archon. Yeah.
And it was him.
Well, on that day it was, because I didn't have my
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyway, we have this. Boris is a very good player, guys. He's a very good player. He knows his Drakari very well. He also had a list which was exceptionally efficient in this format. 9 grotesques. You know, if you don't know what grotesques do, maybe you don't play Drakari that often, just trust me that they're horrific. He's got 3 Talos with Haywire. Again, he's got the right tools, guys. He's got the Ravager with the Disintegrator cannons, okay? He's got Labyrinthine Cunning on his Warlords. He did an Alliance of Agony, which they allowed. This is a very important thing. So he had Agents of Vex, the stratagem. And by the Alliance of Agony, I mean he had a Succubus, he had a Witch Cult detachment, a Coven detachment, and a Black Heart detachment, done as 3 patrols. So he's using the detachment from the Drakari Codex, which they did allow there instead of a single battalion. Nice. So which to be fair, produced a really cool army, but it's very good army. He had a lot of disintegrators across Raiders and the Ravager, a lot of vicious close combat potential, and he had a Void Raven bomber, which is, you know, these things are incredible, and he had a Razorwing jet fighter. So what we're seeing here is a lot of alpha units, and you know, rightfully so. I'm sitting on 3 wins here. I'm bound, you know, I've just had a tough matchup. And then I'm bound to go into another tough matchup, right? So there we go. I go deploy the army. He does go first. I don't get first turn against him because I went to seize and I rolled a 6.
Yeah.
And we were playing on the Realm of Battle board. It was very funny. The whole thing was very funny.
Oh yeah.
And it went shh, and then fell into a crack.
Yeah. So it's cocked.
Yeah, it was cocked. It was cocked. But it was just funny because it landed on the 6 and he sees it. We both look at it. We look at each other. We look at it. And it's on the 6. It's not rolling. It's sliding on the 6.
Yeah.
And then imagine just when something just goes, thunk.
Yeah. I played on that on a similar map in my last game.
Yes.
And then so Dadko kept re-rolling everything, and everyone he re-rolled he'd hit with. Yeah. It was like he got and he already had semi-off, so it was like he had 3 re-rolls. Which is insane. Yeah.
So anyway,
it's a tactic.
Yeah, it's a tactic. So
roll in the cracks.
this game was the closest in some ways of the events. It was very tactical. I decided to go in. There was so much that happened that I'm probably going to miss out a lot, but I need to try and keep it relatively brief, but you'll have the pictures coming up here. I determined early on, as I've always done with the Grey Knights, again, I want to see where he's deploying his stuff. Now, when you're dealing with a good player, he's not really going to make many mistakes in his deployment, and Boris didn't. He made one small one, which enabled me to capitalise on a gap, which I think, funnily enough, ultimately won me the game. So I actually won the game in deployments. So sorry, surprise, I won this game, so I've just given it away. Yeah. But I mean, that's not really indicative of how close this game was. He deployed his grotesques, big 9-man unit, and I've got no business wanting to be in combat with these guys. They're horrific. Same with the Talos. Found them out in the centre of the board. There wasn't really any way that I could engage easily, and most of the objectives are clustered around the centre, but he's got one in his deployment zone, and this is the one where what's mine is yours, I think the ITC mission is. So if I hold mine and I hold the nominated ones in the deployment zone, you get a bonus point.
Right.
And this was his mistake. He didn't deploy enough around his objective in the far corner to defend it adequately. His Talos were kind of just off centre of the middle, and his Grotesques were in the fan in the middle, but I was able to redeploy hard left with things like the Dread Knight with Greater Infinity and Interceptors. And if I got that charge off, he only had on his objective there 2 units of Cabalite Warriors. You know, nothing basically, guys. And it was behind this big depot building, which is massive line of sight blocking.
Yeah.
So what I was able to do, again, I played kind of how I did against the Harlequins and against the Knights. I needed to play the mission and attack him in such a way where I attack him really hard, but I don't give him very much opportunity to hit me back. All right, and I had my Dreadnought with Astrolabe hiding on my objective in one corner. So what I did is I did the hard flanks. And I did the Dread Knight on one side, I did the Interceptors on one side. I deliberately didn't shoot the unit on the objective because I knew I needed to make that charge. Now there's a couple of reasons I needed to make the charge. One, if I made the charge I knew I'd kill them and I'd be sitting on the objective, which would give me a bonus point and give me a massive lead to, you know, in ITC to begin with right off the bat. So he would be playing catch up, which was important. Second, I knew if I made that charge, it would give me the extra move that I needed, especially after I'd killed the unit and then consolidated, to hide those units from him. So that he had a Dread Knight then effectively in his deployment zone and the unit of Interceptors that he couldn't engage with unless he bought the Razor Wing and Void Raven back over there. But the way they were is deployed, he wouldn't have been able to get back over there and effectively engage me. So without a risk of either A, going off the board, or two, I don't even think he could do it anyway, as I recall, with the way that they were placed, because yes, that's right. To cut a long story short, I made the charge, okay? I then swept round, and if he had come back to try and engage me, it would have been really, really difficult. He couldn't do the Void Bomb on me, wasn't able to do that. And two, if he'd brought the Razor Wing back, he had absolutely nothing to engage with the Dreadnought, which is on my objective in the corner. So in the end, I make the charge, of course, with the rerolls, and I get into the perfect position. I score, I kill a unit, I hold more objectives, and I get the bonus points. I'm on max points in my turn one.
Excellent.
He doesn't really get much in his turn one. He kills a unit because he's not. Now his Talos are sort of trying to come across. His Grotesques are like trying to get back to deal with this problem, right? And over the course of the rest of the game, what I did is a bit of a pincer maneuver. So I distracted him. So I had a Voldus and my other Strike Marines come in hard on the right flank to near another objective to force his army to then have to deal with that. So I'm splitting him up now deliberately to take him piecemeal, because if he stays in one big thing, he will sweep through whatever I put before him. And the game continues much this way, you know, very sort of cagey. He's killing the unit, I'm killing a unit. He does a great play where he use Black Cornucopians to redeploy his racks at full strength behind my Dreadnought, and this would have been a significant one. If he had made the charge, he would have then held that objective and he would have got the bonus points.
Right.
At one point he failed to charge. It was a 9-inch charge, it's not guaranteed. He didn't have any rerolls other than the command reroll, but he failed it, and then subsequently I was able to get the bonus for another turn, you know, which again was significant. By the end of the game, he eventually makes it into combat. He does start getting the bonus. We play the game. We actually run out of time, but we play the game out to I think it was turn 5. Boris will tell me about well, we might have actually finished it. It was turn 5 or turn 6. We played through the lunch break. We got a couple more turns in, because by turn 3, when it had ended, or was it turn 4? One of the two. I was actually winning, but it would have been, you know, we wanted to play the game out because he could still win it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well we'll carry on. We'll carry on then. So we carried on, and in the end, he kills the Dread Knight in the end, and we look at all of the points. I'm on 23 points. he's on 22. Because I snipe his Warlord with my Storm Raven as well. So I was playing for all of the points as well. You'll have pictures coming up here. But I just played to maximise my points every single turn. That's what I did. And by the end of the game, you know, I had the last turn because he went first. I'm on 23 points, he's on 22.
Perfect.
So it was a perfect storm, a very tough matchup, an awesome opponent who's a very skilled player, and yeah, it's, you know, Lawrence Luck. So that worked really well. So that was round 4. Now at this point it's starting to become farcical because Grey Knights have won 4 games in a row. Surely they can't win a 5th in a row. So let's go into game 5. That's coming up next. So we come to game 5, and I play Simon. Now Simon is part of the infamous Team Draco. Now Team Draco are actually the London Wargaming Guild's sort of official team for Warhammer 40,000, and currently, correct me if I'm wrong, they are the second best team in ITC points in the world. They might be third now as of doing this, but they were second, certainly. They might be third. But between all of them, they've got some exceptional players on the team. Simon is one of them, and he's an Orc player, and he was making Index Orcs work before, well, anyone. Where most players had given up on them, in fact, I think. And he's had some really, really brilliant lists, such as 120 Storm Boys. Yes, 120 Storm Boys, and he's a regular top 5, top 10 finisher at, you know, the tournament circuit here in the UK. So, you know, what we're dealing with, what I'm trying to say is here, he's a great player, and I knew it was going to be a tough game. So we get into round 1, and absolutely, I was not disappointed. Simon is an exceptional player. He did go first. Really, really precise, great lists. I mean, he still had 120 models in his army and 1,500 points, which is cool. You need that for Orcs anyway. He had a big unit of Storm Boys in there, blobs of 3 blobs of 30. Actually, it's 2 blobs of 30. Forgive me. Troops, Orc Boys, and he had a bunch of Gretchen, a big bunch of knobs with the kill saws and so forth, and he had grots which could tank wounds for them as well, which is really, really good. But, you know, he went first. He went straight up the middle of the boards into these big ruins, which I knew would, you know, be tough. He didn't really kill anything in his first turn. It was more to get the board control and get up the board and hold the objectives and everything, which was the right play to do. And then in my first turn, again, I knew that it sort of was coming down to all of these matchups where my army can't really beat the army, which I know it sounds a bit funny on paper because you think, well, this is Orcs, but this is Orcs, but this is Simon, and he knows what he's doing with them, and there's a lot of models, and I just don't have actually enough firepower over 6 turns with my 1,500 point army to kill all of those models. I just don't, realistically. And the minute I get into combat with him, I'm dead. It's basically what it comes down to. Now, this game can be summarised in a couple of key things. So again, I went for the flanking because he left his home objective at home pretty much just with a few grots. So I played the mission again. So I came in behind him to kill his troops on his objective, hold that point. I then went on the far left flank where I deliberately placed, you know, the objectives where you can to try and get away from him, if you like. And then I went into the attack, that objective there. And then what I wanted to do was take away his mobility. I knew I needed to, and really the only thing that could threaten my Storm Raven. So that was the plan, right? So neutralize what he could do against me, and maximise then my manoeuvrability and what I could do against him. So I went for the Storm Boys. So I did sacrifice some Marines with Astrolabe, and I put my Storm Raven right up the middle, one to help block his movement around me, so use it as a bit of screening to prevent him trying to get in for another turn. And I did put my Dread Knight forwards, again a bit of a gamble. You know, I don't want to say throwing him away, but kind of throwing him away, being willing to let him to go, if you like, because one, I wanted to reroll bubble on my Dreadnought, my Storm Raven, and two, I needed every single shot I could get against those Storm Boys, because if I didn't kill enough of them, they were just going to wreck whatever they touched. So I put everything into those Storm Boys, and in the end I killed something horrific. It's like 23 of them.
Wow.
Out of the 30, so the unit is now really effectively neutered. I've sort of dealt with that unit now. And that was my plan. And obviously I powered up my Dreadnought, I've got my Invon save on and everything. Comes into his next turn, he's obviously not able to do much to the Storm Raven now. There's no point engaging it anymore. So he moves out and starts chasing one of the unit that shot him, the Interceptors that shot him with Astrolabe. To go and deal with them, which is the right play. And then he does manage to, despite my best efforts, get the charges off on the Dreadnoughts, and he gets this huge mob on the Dreadnought. He's got 3 biker characters in there as well, which is really cool. And I'm just gonna have to hope that he survives here. It's as simple as that. And to cut a long story short, he had a dice rolling app because he's rolling 180 attacks.
Yeah.
That's basically what ended up coming in at the Dreadnought. And he uses the dice rolling app, he gets all of these hits, he gets all of these wounds, and it was 80 saves all in the end that I had to make.
How many did you fail?
He said, would you like to use my dice rolling app? And I was like, well, I've never used one of them before. So I wanted to see if the Lawrence luck just, transcended everything. So right. I said, okay, tapped it. I failed 2 saves.
Did he just throw the table over and leave?
No, he looked at me. He looked at the dice app. He looked back at me and he started laughing. And I just looked at the dice app like... there it is.
That's outrageous.
It was outrageous because, look, as I said, I was willing to give the Dreadnought away, that was, I thought he would die, that was the sacrifice I was willing to make because I knew I had my Storm Raven in play and they could go around, maybe snipe the characters at the back. And I was going to redeploy my army over behind him anyway, and at this point it was because I'd maximised the points I could get on turn 1. I knew I'd be in the lead and just play the game where I'm always kind of a turn ahead, a couple of points ahead. That was the plan. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he didn't kill the Dreadnought and that he had gone for him in the secondary, he'd gone for the big... I can't remember what it is. It's not the big game hunter. It's the one where the Dreadnought could give away basically 4 points. I think it was Kingslayer. That's right. Because he was also a warlord. Because he failed to do that, I was then able to Gate of Infinity the Dreadnought out all the way back away from him and deployment zone, so he wasn't in charge range again. I was able to finish off the Storm Boys. Now he's all the way over in where my deployment zone was, and I'm all the way over on his. And in this mission, his objective is worth a bonus to me.
Right.
So, yeah. So I basically, we actually talked out effectively the last 2-3 turns of the game because there wasn't any way for him to get over to me in time. Literally, there was no way, guys. Trust me. We both knew this. He could move. I was then able. It was just a matter of how much was I able to kill with the Storm Raven, which we rolled out. We didn't just talk through it. We rolled it out, and we both agreed that I couldn't kill everything of his, and he ended up holding one objective every single turn in the game, of course, because I didn't physically have enough to kill his stuff either, and he ended up killing a couple more units, and I ended up killing a unit a turn. But as the game washed out, I ended up taking it again, just with enough points. I didn't have many models left, guys. Like I had a Dreadnought and a Storm Raven and like 5 Strike Marines. That was it. Oh, Voldus. That was it. Everything else was dead.
Yeah.
So it was just again playing the mission. I couldn't beat his army, but I could win on the mission if played right. So, look, an awesome game. We had a lot of fun, a very tactical game, and that was it. It was 5 wins in a row at this point. Nice. So now at this point, it's like really farcical. The Grey Knights should have lost by now. probably, but they hadn't. So I went into game 6, and currently, as of game 6, at this point, I'm the only person in the event who hasn't lost a game. So this is the finals, and the person I'm playing goes full circle to the first game that you played is Jamie. How weird! So we go full circle, and he's lost the game.
Circle of life.
Exactly, circle of life. He had lost his game 3. I don't know who he'd lost it to. Tyranids. There we go. So now I'm effectively against Astra Militarum, which again is a very tough matchup for me. But I've got a good chance of winning the event here, which is hilarious, right? Cool. So let's go over that. That's coming up next. And so we had Jamie. So this was a tough game right off the bat because he's basically got a mech wall, which is what Grey Knights don't like. But what's worse is he's got all of the chaff, and he had 5 squads as well, so he had lots of infantry to screen me out and to keep me away from his assets. So he's got the best of both worlds because he's got the cheap tank wall, which is toughness 8, so against me that's tough, right? And he's got the ability to stop me delivering stuff in combat. So I knew that my Storm Raven and my Dreadnought would sort of have to do overtime here. Now I won't go over all of his list again because you've already done it, but basically he had Pask and another 2 Lehman Russ Eradicators, a Wyvern. He had a Hellhound, he had mortars everywhere so he could fire at
That's right, the mortars, I left them out.
Indirect line of fire, which is really, really important. And he had a big unit of Bullgrins, which are really, really competitive choice as well. So his list was really strong. I wanted first turn, really. I didn't get first turn, which was a shame, because if I'd gotten the first turn, I think I would have been able to put on a little bit more of an effective show, if you like, but he was able to screen me out further because then he could move further out, which is kind of a problem because he's keeping all of his assets at the back, right? So in the end, the game wasn't even very long. I think it literally ended on turn 3. My Storm Raven came flying up 1 wing, powered up my Dread Knights. I failed a really important charge because I wanted to try and wrap and trap him, and I failed the charge to do it, and I was going to have my Dread Knight fight twice to get through 2 layers of his screen to then end up near the middle of his deployment zone, which would in turn, obviously he would have countered with his Ogrins then, but I needed the Dread Knight there to protect my Interceptors, which are also doing the same thing on the right flank, and my Strike Marines on the left, so that he had maximum pressure on. So I don't think he would have been effectively be able to deal with everything. But as it turned out, the Dread Knight failed, and it meant that I was sort of stuck in the middle of the board, so he could effectively ignore him for a turn, which is like the worst case scenario for me. So that was the major issue, if you like. The second issue was the Storm Raven pretty much effectively whiffed in the turn that it needed to do really well. It just failed, and I actually ended up killing the Hellhounds with the Dreadnoughts, but the Storm Raven I was just rolling 1s and 2s on it. Then what happened was when he got his next turn on Pask, he rolled 12 shots on his battle cannon. And
he did the orders where he could re-roll it.
Yeah. So he rolled, because he was firing twice, he then proceeded to wound 10 times. Ugh. Which is extraordinarily lucky, right? And then I proceeded to only make 2 saves.
Yeah.
So he destroyed the Storm Raven in the first round of fire from the very first gun. That was a huge problem because it literally opened up the other 2 Lehman Russ to then just fire up whatever else they wanted. Yeah. Whereas realistically, actually, you should have taken 2 of them to deal with that Storm Raven. I thought the Storm Raven would die. If I got lucky, it might take 3, or I survive, and at that point you can start getting a bit of momentum. But taking it out with the first gun, the first bit of fire, meant that all of a sudden my whole army was really exposed because he didn't have that to deal with anymore. So over the course of the next 3 turns, he literally just obliterated everything, and it came down to this hilarious thing with Voldus hiding in the corner on an objective, and he finally managed to snipe him with Pask, actually, as he came around the corner. But that was it. I was basically sitting on the objective, just trying to get as many points as I could. Really quick game, 3 turns. Nothing. Literally, I think if I played that game, in all honesty, again and again, I would probably lose again and again, unless the luck was he gets a bit unlucky against a Storm Raven, because that was really the only effective tool I had to get into. To destroy one of his alpha tanks, and or if I make the charge early enough with the Dread Knight and can deliver him. But the way that they've got so much to screen you out with, you're fighting against the tide. Let's put it that way. You're swimming against the tide right from the get go, and as you say, I mean, with multiple Lehman Russ, because he's got multiple of those. And the Plasma Decimator is actually really good as well. Highly underrated, really effective at taking out things like Dread Knights or any big scary thing. And he's got the Borgrins as well to protect his line against combat. So, like my Strike Marines and my Interceptors are actually pretty useless against him. Like, they did get in, but he's got 4 up invulnerable saves and all this sort of jazz. It just wasn't really that effective. So, I think we could play the game multiple times. I'd need to go first. I would need to have, some good rolls for my Raven, and I'd need to make the Dread Knight charge turn 1. Without those, and that's 3 different things that I'm kind of relying on now against that style list, that makes it very, very tough to win. So in the end, I still took points from the game. I was playing the game to get points, but he gets a really big win, 33 points, and I get 8 points, right? So at this point, no one has won 6 games. And I've lost my last game, but I have had a couple of big wins, but I've also had some sort of meaty, tight games, tight wins. So at this point, the tournament is anyone's, right? So I don't know what's going to happen. I think I'll place okay. But to cut a long story short, after all of the scores come in, because remember, there's the Fun and Fluff scores as well, right? I get first place.
Huzzah!
Plus the Sword of Power.
Yeah, that's what I was jealous about, the sword.
It's so cool.
It's very cool.
So I won. So, which was, I was like, oh, that's amazing. So thank you to all of my opponents, and to of course to London Wargaming Guild for hosting an amazing event. I think overall it was an exceptionally enjoyable experience. I was really surprised to pull off the win there, but it felt good, because with Grey Knights is tough. Every game's really tough, and having the 5 wins in a row up to that point. I was the only undefeated person in the event. When I suddenly got the first place on the soft scores, I was like, oh, well, okay, well, I didn't feel like I hadn't fought hard for it, if that makes sense. Because no one else had won 6 games. I wasn't beating someone else that had actually, and that's why I think the scoring system that they had did kind of work, because if you'd won all 6 of your games, you were going to win the event.
I actually went down after Fun and Fluff.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that. So I think because you get marked on painting and
I'm just not very fun.
That's not true.
Yeah.
But it kind of it works. The scoring system works, because if you did win all 6 games, you would win the event.
Yeah.
But because no one won all 6 games, that's not how it panned out.
It comes down to that.
It came down to the softs. Yeah. So look. Amazing event, very humbled to win it. We'll definitely be returning to future events.
For sure.
Any final thoughts?
Not really, no. I had a really good time.
Yeah.
I had a really good time. I still have I'm a little bit, it's one of those things where it's, sometimes when you go to a tournament and you kind of, afterwards, and you have, it's almost like buyer's regret on the whole thing, because when I looked at my list and all that sort of stuff and a couple of things that happened, you kind of go, I'm a little bit disappointed with that.
Yeah.
But other than that, the atmosphere was awesome. I met some really cool people. It was really well run.
Yeah, really well.
Was it? It was their first.
No. They are very experienced at running events.
Right.
This was the largest that they've run.
Okay.
But it was seamless.
Yeah.
It was really, run really well.
Everything was efficient.
The terrain was fantastic as well.
There was nothing going on. Yeah, terrain was great. Everything was great. It was like, honestly, it was definitely one of the tightest run ships I've ever been to.
Yeah. Peter and Richard do an amazing job. Great hosts. Couldn't recommend the club or their events highly enough. So there we go. Another Voxcast done. So for you people that like these tournament Voxcasts, hopefully you found that interesting. No doubt we'll be doing another one very soon after we make an appearance at the Dutch Grand Tournament.
That's next stop.
Well, that's all very super competitive, very serious gaming. Not for me, but that's fine. We'll see how I do. Yes, I'm going to be crazy and take Grey Knights again, but obviously I'll soup it up a bit now because it's going to be very serious. And then you're going to take
Pure Tau.
Yep.
Yeah. For better or for worse.
For the greater good.
Exactly.
And more importantly, for Titan. So, until next time, this has been The Spider and the Bone. We'll see you soon.